If you look at a map of Africa, one thing stands out immediately. Nearly the entire northern half of Algeria is covered by the Sahara Desert. In fact, about 80% of the whole country is desert. This often surprises people, because Algeria is not a small place. It is actually the largest country in Africa. So the natural question becomes simple. Why does such a huge nation consist mostly of sand, stone, and dry land? To understand that answer, you must go back thousands, sometimes millions, of years into Earth's climate history, regional geography, and ancient environmental shifts that shaped North Africa long before modern borders existed. The first thing to know is that deserts do not appear overnight. They develop slowly, due to long-term patterns in rainfall, wind, vegetation, and even the movement of continents. Scientists studying North Africa explain that the Sahara was not always a desert. In fact, there were long periods in the past when the area we now call Algeria looked completely different. Evidence from fossils, cave paintings, and sediment layers show that the Sahara went through cycles. Sometimes it was green, full of lakes, rivers, and grasslands. At other times, it became very dry. These natural climate changes are driven by shifts in Earth's orbit and rotation, which affect how much sunlight reaches the northern part of the continent. When sunlight patterns change, rainfall patterns change. And whenever rainfall decreases over long periods, deserts expand. Algeria lies in a part of the world that receives very little rainfall today. This is because it sits under what climatologists call the subtropical high-pressure belt. High-pressure systems push air downward, preventing clouds from forming. Without clouds, there is no rain. So year after year, the region stays dry. This is one of the main reasons the Sahara exists. It is not just about heat. It is mainly about the lack of rain. Many hot places around the world are not deserts, but places with extremely low rainfall always become deserts, no matter the temperature. The Sahara's location is also connected to the mountains in northern Algeria. When moist winds come from the Mediterranean Sea, the Atlas Mountains block much of that moisture from traveling southward. This means northern Algeria can have forests, farms, and cities with Mediterranean climates, while the southern region remains extremely dry. The mountains act like a natural barrier, keeping the desert conditions in place across the vast interior. Over thousands of years, another factor shaped Algeria's desert: the movement of the African continent itself. North Africa slowly drifted into its current position, placing it in one of the driest latitudes on Earth. Geological studies show that the Sahara began forming millions of years ago, long before humans lived there. However, the desert reached its largest size only in the last several thousand years, especially after the last major wet period ended around 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. During that wet period, Algeria's Sahara had lakes, hippos, crocodiles, and green valleys. Rock art in places like Tassili in Niger shows people swimming, herding cattle, and hunting animals that no longer exist in the region. These paintings, many of them over 7,000 years old, remind us that today's desert was once a thriving environment. As the climate changed and rainfall decreased, plant life disappeared. Without vegetation to hold the soil, wind erosion increased. Over time, huge areas became sandy plains, rocky plateaus, and dry valleys. This transformation was not caused by one event, but by a combination of slow natural processes: less rainfall, stronger winds, and a gradual loss of greenery. Human activity may have played a small role in accelerating desertification in some places, through grazing or clearing land, but the overall shift was driven by natural climate cycles. One important detail about Algeria is that its desert is not just sand. Many people imagine endless dunes, but only a small part of the Sahara looks that way. Algeria's desert includes stone plateaus, high mountain ranges, and ancient dry riverbeds called wadis. The Arhaga Mountains and Tassili region are among the most famous landscapes. They contain some of the oldest rock art in the world and reveal how dramatically the climate has changed since prehistoric times. These regions help scientists understand not only Algeria's past, but also the history of early human migration across Africa. Another reason Algeria has so much desert is its size. Because the country covers a massive area stretching deep into the Sahara, even small changes in climate would still leave large portions dry. Countries located farther south experience more rainfall because they move into tropical zones, but Algeria remains in the northern belt where dry conditions dominate. Over time, the desert simply stayed in place while the edges shifted slightly with each climate cycle. Today's desert boundaries are the result of thousands of years of stability in those dry conditions. It is also important to understand that deserts are not empty. Algeria's Sahara has been home to many communities for thousands of years. The Tuareg people, for example, adapted to life in the harsh environment, developing deep knowledge of navigation, water sources, and survival techniques. Their culture is part of Algeria's identity, shaped by the landscape itself. Even trade history connects to the desert. For centuries, trans-Saharan trade routes passed through Algeria, linking West Africa to the Mediterranean world. Gold, salt, slaves, and other goods moved along these routes, making desert towns important centers of commerce. So when you see how much of Algeria is desert, what you are really seeing is a story of Earth's climate, continental movement, ancient civilizations, and long cycles of environmental change. The desert is not a mistake. It is the natural result of where Algeria sits on the planet and the long history of how North Africa evolved over millions of years. Today, scientists continue to study the region because the Sahara still changes slowly, inch by inch, year by year. But its overall dry character remains stable. Understanding this helps explain not only the landscape of Algeria, but also the human history shaped by that landscape. The desert influenced settlement patterns, culture, ancient trade, and even modern development. It reminds us that geography plays a powerful role in shaping the identity of a nation. And for Algeria, the desert is not just part of the environment. It is part of the country's past, present, and future.